Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Okay, welcome back. Welcome back to more Live from the Heartland. This is for the week of April 8th, and we are recording it on the 5th. And my next guest is someone who, it's always great because she never turns me down and comes on the show, the one and only Kelly Cassidy, the state representative for the great state of Illinois from the 14th District. And I've got Kelly coming on today to talk about what happened in our election. I'm going to read a little something from Axios Chicago. And they said Cook County Board Commissioner Brandon Johnson defeated Paul Vallis to become the next mayor of Chicago. Why it matters. The win signals a leftward shift in city politics where a progressive political movement has been gaining strength among voters in recent years. It also reflects the power of the Chicago Teachers Union, whose early support of Johnson catapulted the former teacher and union organizer from an unknown candidate to mayor-elect. Anything you want to add to that, Kelly Cassidy? And good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you. And I'm still a little bleary-eyed from not just yesterday, but the last 5 weeks of really being in an all-out sprint between the legislative schedule, which is at its intense point, and having this really existential election that was facing us. This was all of those things and so much more. For myself as a member of the LGBTQ community, there was an existential threat in Paul Vallis, and I think that the other thing that we did in not falling for his sleight of hand was reject what we're seeing around the country, where people get to make up their own truth. Right. This is a guy who went on Dan Propp's radio show, who said that the head of Awake Illinois should be governor. That right there, that chunk right there is folks that are responsible for the vast majority of my death threats. Right. And this guy was cozying up to them, but then wanted us all to believe that it was just, it was nothing. It was, I didn't mean it. When he has spent the last 3 years denying science and aligning with folks who want to erase trans folks from existence, and expressing his personal opinions on abortion as he is fundamentally anti-choice, and he's a Republican, he said, and we were all supposed to ignore that and accept as fact that was just that don't pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. So I'm proud of Chicago for rejecting alternative facts too.
I think it was great. We just didn't know how it was going to go. We had this fear that, maybe we weren't as progressive as we were becoming.
Yeah.
We have had, this will be our 4th African-American mayor. And, all of a sudden out of nowhere comes Vallis, who kind of screwed up school systems here in Chicago, in New Orleans, Bridgeport, Connecticut. And they kept pushing how he's the real Democrat.
Right.
You went all out for Brandon Johnson, but you didn't start there. You did support in the primary our outgoing mayor, Mayor Lori Lightfoot, I'm complimenting you that I gave you some about supporting her and not Chewy originally, but I think what happened for a lot of people around town, and yourself included, was once Brandon was in the primary, you were all in.
100%. And we, and now in my role as Democratic committee person here in the 49th Ward, this is an organization that has a proud tradition of member-driven endorsement processes. And in the February race, we came to a very clear conclusion that nobody would have gotten a majority. We had a lot of our friends up here, mostly divided between Brandon and Chewy. Lori's been my friend for 30 years. Not gonna abandon her when she's down. So that was kind of the easy part. Then we get through the February election, and we convened as a board to decide how to move forward. And we decided to endorse the Democrat because we're a Democratic organization. So this was one that there's no membership vote on every general election either. When somebody comes out of the primary, they're the winner. And, in this instance, it was pretty clear who the Democrat was.
Right on. Let me, there were a few Democrats that we had a lot of respect for that came out for Vallis. I mean, I'm going to put their names right out there. We have Bobby Rush, who was the Minister of Defense of the Black Panther Party, who has now become a Christian. We had Pat Quinn, who I've always liked Pat. He's a maverick kind of a guy, but he came out for Vallis. And then Dick Durbin, who's looking a little older than I remember him. Although I did see him recently, he looks like he did then too. I was blown away that he came out and supported Vallis. Your take on these people, particularly, any of the three that I've mentioned, and there are probably other people who came out and supported Vallis rather than Brandon Johnson, and who knows what they're doing today or in the future.
Yeah, I will say, one of the most striking things as folks, as endorsements were rolling out was how many times former had to be used to describe an endorser of Mr. Vallis. There's the Bill Clinton line, don't build a bridge to the past, show a path to the future. So that was pretty striking. And yeah, there were a lot of head scratchers among those endorsements. I can't really pick for Bobby Rush to have done that. We all have our reasons for doing the things we do, right? That one puzzled me. Right. The Durbin thing, like he comes from a more moderate place. He has been great on most of the progressive policies that we care about. My first lobbying interaction ever in the state when I started working here was him defending an abortion ban based on voting his district. He was a downstate congressman at that point. And so I think we have to remember, your roots are your roots, and he is fundamentally more moderate. And so that one honestly was a little less surprising to me. For me, and this is personal, super personal, but the folks from the gay community who not only endorsed Vallis, but were among the trolliest trolls I encountered as I was pushing.
Are you talking about Tunney?
Well, Tunney and others, Tunney didn't ever troll me. Like, we have a long relationship. We understood we were in different places. But anytime I tweeted anything about the campaign or posted it on any of my socials, this cadre of white gay men would come out yelling at me about destroying the city. When in reality, as I said before, this man has laid down with the people that are responsible for the majority of the death threats in my state police file. Like, that is disqualifying. And, I said when we passed marriage equality, you don't get to take your cake and go home. And, that's what these folks did. They got theirs, right? We have civil rights, we have marriage. They don't care necessarily maybe that trans kids are under attack in every state around us. They don't care maybe that, that a bakery that's had a drag brunch has been terrorized for months. That matters to me. And so those were among the most disappointing endorsements for me, frankly.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is who gave the money. I mean, clearly.
Right, the DeVos money and all. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, we had Betsy DeVos, who was the Secretary of Education under the last president and is a terrible person. She came in with a bunch of money. You had Uline, who I think probably lives in Lake Forest, but I don't know where the company is.
I think they're in Wisconsin now, actually.
And then you had what's the other one that was? We had the Griffin, who moved out.
Money as well. Yeah, and
they put all this money into, and that's why I don't know.
What were they expecting from it, right? That's what you got to wonder.
That's why people I wonder about Durbin, and see that that money was coming from clearly the enemies of the people in the state that he has represented. And then,
Yeah.
anyhow.
Yeah, and it's it's interesting. Like I've never been a person that there's a difference between who you accept contributions from in small ways, right? Like if I get tobacco money, for example, lots of people send tobacco money back. I donate it to a charity that provides health care. Like I'm not giving them back their money.
What brand of tobacco is supporting you?
In the past, I've gotten, I can't even remember the names, but various associations that represent that stuff. You'll get a check, out of nowhere. And what do I do with this? I'm not going to put it back in their pockets. I'm going to make some good happen out of it. So there's that kind of like donor analysis. But when somebody is investing so heavily, you got to wonder what they think they're getting for it.
Yeah. Well, it's clearly, I'm glad they lost on this one, and I hope they keep losing on it. Kelly Cassidy, let's talk a little bit about what it means to have Brandon Johnson as our new mayor. He had a lot of union support, but clearly not all unions. There were some trades.
Well, there's kind of the traditional break between public sector unions and the trades. That's we see that. Usually it's more subtle, but you do see those divisions.
He also stressed over and over that it was a multi-religious, multi-ethnic, multi-race, cross-age, multi-age. He talked about roots with Harold. I mean, Chewy took a lot of hits for talking too much about Harold. Brandon probably saved it till the end after he was nearing the finish line.
Yeah.
Victory. But he talks a great game. I had never really heard him give a speech till last night. He was pretty impressive. He had to be pretty happy that he had pulled this out. What's your take on the future now? And if you want to include some of the stuff on the new makeup, the city council, that would be a good time to do it.
Sure. I mean, I think that, the last election started the move towards a more functional city council, a more functional legislative body. And I think that, and I'm still kind of digesting everything that happened in all of these other races. I've made a very, very conscious decision that I was not going to engage anywhere but in our home ward, because I felt like it was so important that we get as many people out to vote and make sure that we reactivate the folks that might have been disaffected by the February election. So I was less engaged in a lot of those, or even less aware in a lot of the other races. So I'm still kind of absorbing it, but it's fundamentally clear that that the intention here is for this to be a much more functional legislative body. And I think that that's a place where he has a bit of a leg up because he's been part of a legislative body. And, we see this with governors who haven't necessarily had legislative experience, who don't really understand the interplay between the branches. We saw it with Rauner. We saw it, even a little bit with Pritzker early on, and with Lightfoot. Right? There's a nuance to being the executive, but being a co-equal branch of government that doesn't exist in any other place in your life. So I think that he is well situated to manage that and navigate that well, regardless of the ideological bent of the ultimate, makeup of the council, because that's the part I haven't fully absorbed yet. I think that gives him a significant advantage, and that ability to build relationships that you just mentioned. He comes off very warm. He's very engaging. He's very thoughtful. I didn't know him really well. We had done some movement work together prior. We've been on projects together, but we hadn't really hung out. And spending some time with him over the last 5 weeks, I think that his personality, his persona, will lend itself well to the role.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I think that, probably is now a time where we want to really support the new guy coming in. And it's pretty special. What is your sense of his ability to pick people and have a lot of strong people around him? As I recall, Harold had some really good people. And, it's really key to who you have. I mean, he might be able to be a strong enough guy to just do it out there on his own. But I think a good team is really where it's at. Any sense on that?
It doesn't feel like that the lone wolf thing is his style either, right? Like I feel like he's a collaborator by nature. If you look at some of his early endorsements, he's got a lot of great policy chops in his close circle. Robert Peters is one that comes to mind. The architect of the Safety Act. Having him around Kwame. A lot of these folks that have that bring some real depth of understanding of policy, I think are really going to be great assets to him.
What's your sense about the governor and his relationship? The governor kind of took a few swipes at Vallis in some ways.
Well, Vallis took more than a few swipes at the governor over the last 3 years. So I think that JB was the epitome of restraint in holding off and I understand why, honestly. Like, you're the governor, you're going to have to deal with the mayor regardless. So I get that. But I think that this was a good outcome for the governor as well.
Yeah, I think the governor probably is glad how it came out.
Yeah.
Kelly, you are the state rep, so I'm going to jump from city council, from the metropolitan area of Chicago and our new mayor to a little bit about the state legislature, okay?
Sure.
I was looking, as I do on Wednesday mornings before we record, I'm looking at everything I can find. And in the Springfield Daily News, the headline was, "Child care funding expansion remains focal point for lawmakers going into the second half of legislative calendar." Then they talk about increasing access to child care and boosting funding for child care programs, remaining a focal point for lawmakers going into the final stretch of the spring legislative session. What's going on down there that you think is important that people should be aware of and happy about, or unhappy?
Or unhappy about, absolutely. So we're on spring break right now. So we've both chambers have moved their initial bills to the other side. So it's like the all-star break, and when we go back, each chamber's load is a little lighter because you're only dealing with what made it across the transom. And that's when we really get down and dirty with the budget. This childcare expansion has been something that's really central to the governor's goals for this budget cycle. And it speaks to, first of all, his lifelong commitment to that early childhood education has been his thing from jump. But also, what we learned going into and coming out of the pandemic is just the incredible, the role that childcare plays in our economy. And also, what it means to have that reliable and safe childcare, how that makes you as a parent a better employee, employer. It's really critical. And I think that we saw the holes in our system as we were coming out of the pandemic. And so that's been a commitment. We're also, moving forward on figuring out how we're going to come out of this period of relative wealth with the federal relief dollars and what programs might get hit by that. So this is going to be a challenging budget year. Our revenues are still strong, but we've been very, very lucky to have these buckets of federal money available to help fill some of the gaps. So it's going to be a challenging budget. We're looking at lots of policy changes coming along. We're still dealing with sort of the pent up policy changes that we didn't get to during the pandemic. So there's some good stuff coming through. My favorite bill of the year is my natural organic reduction bill, which is otherwise known as human composting, which will permit funeral directors to provide this very low carbon footprint way of dealing with your remains after death. So that's been a really fun bill to work on. It's the coolest thing about this job is you get to learn about stuff you never would have otherwise. And so that one's made it over to the Senate. Senator Simmons is carrying it on the Senate side, and I anticipate that Illinois will be the 7th state to permit natural organic reduction.
All right, Kelly, that's something else. I like the sound of it. Natural organic reduction.
It's really, really cool. And I know we're over time, so we can talk about it more at another one if you want. But it's a
Well,
very, very cool process.
I'm going to ask you one more question. Our friend Dave Kraft from the Nuclear Energy Information Service, he put out his action alert. He's been pushing this heavy, and we had him on the show recently. He says, you have 14 days to help stop new nuclear power plants from coming to Illinois. He wants us to call our state reps before April 18th. Just pretend I'm calling you right now.
Consider myself called.
And urging opposition to SB 0076, a bill that repeals Illinois nuclear reactor construction moratorium. On March 30th, that was opening day for the White Sox and the Cubs, the Illinois Senate voted 39-13 to repeal the Illinois 87 nuclear construction moratorium. Bill SB 76 now returns to the Illinois House for a vote sometime after April 18th. It is now up to you, to me, all of us, to prevent new reactors from being built in Illinois. 14 days to get the job done. Be less from the day this is actually aired. What's your take on that, Kelly?
So this kind of speaks to that same breakdown we talked about with regard to the trades and the public sector unions. This is something that the trades want. And so a lot of the moderate Democrats are into it, regardless of the environmental question. And then you get all the Republicans, and suddenly you have a majority. On the House side, the lead sponsor actually came to me, and he was walking around with a roll call, as we do. And he informed me that the speaker had told him that he would not be able to call his bill unless he could show that there were 60 Democrats willing to vote for it. And as he started to approach me and started to talk about his bill, he went, "Oh, never mind. You're not going to be okay with this." One of the things I've learned is, the way the bill is written, it sounds a little bit innocuous. They talk about these mini reactors, at which, if you're open to such a thing, it might be able to make it sound a little less scary. But the reality is, anywhere. So this could be used as a camel's nose under the tent, foot in the door, or whatever thing you want to call it, to get back to full nukes. And for the people with those in their districts, that's a ton of jobs. And I see when those issues come up that very often my colleagues are between a rock and a hard place when you're talking about an employer of 1,000 people in your district. What are you going to do? So that's where it gets complicated for some of my colleagues.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought up peeking out from under the tent or something, because when I was a young guy up in Vermont visiting my brother, I was with my dad, and there was a girly show at this fair, and I remember kind of trying to take a peek through the opening in the tent, and someone punched me in the face. So ever since then, I've been never went to a girly show. Okay.
Never, ever.
This was good. Let's get you back to talk more about trans youth, drag shows. How many guys didn't dress up to be a woman once in a while? Anyhow,
right.
I don't understand all of what's going on. Kelly, you're great. Got any parting words you want to throw out there to the masses who are watching or listening to our show?
Go Rogers Park. This community really stepped up in the last 5 weeks. I am beyond proud of all of the folks who really put this campaign on their shoulders and didn't give up, even when there were moments when it looked a little bleak. So it shows that people power is real.
And all you people who would rather see Katie Hogan hosting the show than me, she pretty much is
pretty busy.
She does come on now and then, and I'm sure we'll get her back really soon, because she worked really hard on getting.
She ran this campaign for us out of our ward office, and she was amazing.
Right on. Well, you're amazing too. Keep up the good work, and I'll see you real soon in the neighborhood, probably around.
So take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.